The king of wines and the wine of kings. Do you know that Barolo is Italy's pride? And it wasn't always a red wine or dry either. It used to be sweet and sparkling.
And with time, it has evolved to rule the palates and imaginations the world over, like a king.
On the northwestern edge of Italy are the hills of Piedmont, which translated from Italian means the foot of the hills or the foot of the mountains. Wines have been made here for centuries by the Celts, the Romans, even the French under the kingdom of the Savoy. However, the Nebbiolo grape only came here in 1266.
And it is a finicky character and ripens late, even on the sunniest of Piedmontese slopes. And it is picked early in winters when the fog sets in. The Italian term for fog is nebbia, which gave it its name, Nebbiolo. At one point in time, locally it was said, when the fog sets in, pick the grape.
Some stories suggest that it is because of heavy plume or white powdery yeast on its skin. That is why it's called so.
Whatever be the true story, this thin-skinned grape is a local hero. It claims it as its world-famous permanent address, which is now also UNESCO World Heritage Site.
By the time the term Barolo first featured on wine labels, it was the 19th century. A dry red wine with mouth-watering acidity, supple tannins, and a personality that could not be ignored.
The first few generations of Barolo producer would age the wine in huge oak barrels and rest them further 4 decades before drinking them. These producers were called traditionalists. They would say, buy the wine now and drink them after 20 years.
But then came the younger generation who were a little impatient or excited to show their wines. They brought in smaller barrels that would make the wines age faster, or to make space for them, they literally cut down the massive ones from their papa's cellars with chainsaws, marking a dramatic change in both generation and winemaking philosophy.
And these new wines were fruitier, fresher, more vivacious, less oak-driven, ready to be relished upon release. And though the dads and the granddads did not really appreciate this thinking change and tinkering with the personality of Barolos, consumers call these young guns the modernists.
And this war on oak usage sparked what is now called Barolo Wars. This divide has stayed, and even movies are made on this now. Watch a famous documentary called Barolo Boys to find out more.
And this has to be the biggest wine war within a region. So much so that the families of traditional winemakers did not allow their kids at school to be pals with those of the modernist winemakers.
So they may disagree on style, but the one thing they do agree on is the recipe. It has to be a Nebbiolo only wine, aged for a minimum of 3 years to be called Barolo, and for 5 years to be a Reserva before it's released. This recipe was conferred with the prestigious DOCG title in the year 1980, which is the highest quality classification for an Italian wine.
And now there are various styles of Barolos, and one must understand the differentiation between communes, villages, crus, and even winemakers' personal styles to pick their favorites.
It is said that Barolo producers learned the idea of selecting sites and crus from their Burgundian counterparts in France.
The more aromatic ones come from Barolo and La Morra, while Castiglione Faletto and Monforte d'Alba will give you more structured and age-worthy wines. Serralunga d'Alba tends to be spicier and more muscular. And all this is thanks to the divide of the Tortonian and Helvetica soils, which are under the grapevines.
Be it a traditional style or a modern one, it's a gastronomic delight. Pair it with local Albert truffles, anilotti pasta with ragu sauce, or any good game dish. If you don't want to go this fancy, try a mushroom-heavy pasta or risotto and see the magic unfold.
Even better if the Barolo is decanted and drunk on its 10th birthday, and if in case it is a Reserva, make it its 15th birthday. But do note, good Barolos can age for even 30, 40 or years beyond that. The oldest one I tasted was just a couple of years ago at a local Anteprima or showcase event called Nebbiolo Prima, which dated back to 1954. And I must say, it still had some fight left back in it.
Wow, that would be something. So gents, I don't have any Barolos on me. So why don't you two taste it and talk about it?
Happy to do that. So Gagan, what's in your glass today?
So what I'm tasting today is a modern Barolo, or a modernist winemaker's Barolo called Paolo Scavino from their Grand Cru vineyard called Canubi, not Cannabis, from the year 2010. And it is a very, very special bottle because it has been signed by the winemaker.
To keep things interesting, I am also tasting from the same non-cannabis Canubi vineyard, but this is the Francesco Rinaldi. It's also a Barolo, obviously, and but not a modernist. So what do you find in your glass?
So a good Barolo should definitely have some red fruit flavors, a little bit of rose, tar, forest floor, mushrooms, and definitely some oak in which it stays for such a long time. Mine looks a little aged, but you can still see that the color is pretty dense. though the grape is very, thin-skinned, but it has good amount of tannins in it. Add the tannins of oak, but this is modernist wine, so the tannin level would be lesser, fruitiness would be much more. And this is a wine that is supposed to be make it, drink it, although after a few years, but make it, drink it, and enjoy it while it's young. What do you think about the traditional winemakers' approach?
I see your point on the younger, the more accessible, drinkable style of modernist, because this year, the traditional style, although this is about 5-6 years in, it's really young. I think the oak, because of the large old oak, has a certain funk to it. So I won't say it's bad, but it's an enjoyable wrinkle on a wine that's aging. But the bigger concern is that it's got a lot of tannins, super flex, really, really heavy and rich on the palate. And I think the wine seems closed because of them at the moment. So I'm not getting much by aromas. It's very minerally, tannic, and then it has this slight funky toast at the back.
Well, this one definitely has that mouth-watering acidity. It still has that grip of tannins and a little bit of that dusty, grainy oak, which still would require a few more years to, become smoother. But that earthiness, that mushroom and forest floor character, which, as Sahil mentioned, would go with the pasta, the truffles, and that ragu sauce, I think the wine does justice to it.
So you feel like a king having a Barolo?
I don't know how kings feel, but yeah, definitely I feel special.
Yeah, we like the modernist and the traditionalist.
So to the king of wines and the wines of the king.
Cheers.
Cheers.